Hey, what's up, Giants fans? Welcome to another episode of Giants Talk. I'm Cole Kuiper here with Giants insider Alex Pavlovic. Today, we've got more offseason updates, both with the Giants and around the league. But most importantly, Alex sat down with Randy Winn, Giants Vice President of Player Development. So stay tuned towards the end of the episode to hear from Randy Winn about what the strategy and development will be going forward. Before we get started, Giants Talk is presented by Mancini Sleep World. At Mancini Sleep World, every mattress is backed by their Rest Easy promise. That means 365-night comfort guarantee, free next day delivery, and old mattress removal. Best price guarantee, 0% financing for 60 months. Mancini's make sure you sleep soundly in every way. Visit sleepworld.com. All right, Alex, let's start around the league. We've been talking about how this is one of those off seasons where a lot of it has to do with waiting until big dominoes fall. And I think we got a big domino this weekend.
Big domino on Saturday. Big weekend for Chicago. And Alex Bregman. I think we mentioned this maybe last podcast or the one before. This is something I've heard going back to the winter meetings. Like, Giants people just kept bringing him up. Like, I think once Bregman is the guy that goes, that'll clear a lot. And so this is important for a few reasons. First and foremost, we can kind of close the circle on the Rafi Devers thing. And
Yeah.
I know in Boston, I want to read this. This is from a Boston media member that I saw the other day. It was very salty, but I think it summed everything up. He said, so the Red Sox ruined their relationship with and eventually traded their franchise superstar and longest tenured player in the name of playing Alex Bregman at third base, only to then let Alex Bregman walk 7 months later. Now they're both gone. Make it make sense. So as tough as parts of this offseason have been for Giants fans, at least Devers is in San Francisco and they're not dealing with this, which seems like a little sister of like the way they let Mookie happen and just kind of doesn't make a whole lot of sense. There's a lot of young talent there in Boston, so maybe the future is really bright. But this whole Bregman, Devers, trading that money so then you could sign people in the offseason. Maybe they have Kyle Tucker up their sleeve or Bo Bichette, but they haven't signed anybody yet. So An interesting time there in Boston.
Are we going to have to redo this whole narrative when the Giants and Cubs face off? Or is this a real Boston? Is the only people who care about the Bregman Devers situation Boston?
I think it's Boston, and it's more just like, that trade, you look back at it now and it's Hicks is Hicks. So it's like they're really, really dependent on Kyle Harrison turning into something. And he didn't pitch for them a whole lot after he got traded over there. They spent some time reworking his mechanics and everything, but they already traded Tibbs. They didn't use that money to bring Bregman back. So that part, at least from a Giants perspective, they feel like they did pretty well. Now, maybe 5 years from now, they'll be like, oh man, this contract's an anchor. But it is, I did see a lot of, on the For You tab, I guess you're not on Twitter as much anymore, but
they all have For You tabs though.
Yeah, you check a couple of tweets and then all of a sudden you get bombarded with angry Red Sox people. They did not seem happy about the way this has all gone down.
Yeah, as we as Giants fans kind of stew in our misery over various things, it is fun to look around the league and know that everyone does that. And some, like the Red Sox, have much stronger reasons to than others. Because I see a lot of even Dodgers fans stewing in misery. I think that's just what being a sports fan is these days.
It definitely is. So tough times all around. But that was, I think it was, we try to always go back to like what's Giants related. That was the Bregman trade. I do think there's a pretty heavy element of the Giants were in the middle of that. Or the Bregman signing.
The Bregman signing was 5 years, $175 million, and I believe about $70 million of that is deferred. So another one of these big, they'll be paying him for years to come kind of deals.
A lot of money for Alex Bregman, but he has a very good reputation in the game. You mentioned the deferrals. It is like I put that right there with the opt-outs where Giants can feel how they want to about them, or Giants fans can feel how they want to about them. It's just kind of the way it goes now. and
Yeah.
especially when so many of these players have one agent, Scott Boras, who has a pretty, and give him credit, like this game plan has worked brilliantly. The short-term deals and the
Oh, yeah.
opt-out, and then letting these guys get another crack at the market and finding somebody to give them their big deal. Bregman's going to end up over 200 million over a 6-year span. So it is, at some point the Giants are going to have to dip back into that market and deal with the. I mean, they did it with, they were part of it too with Chapman and Chapman getting extended, but they did it with Blake Snell, and so that I think I put hand in hand with like the opt outs, that like these are things they're going to have to get more comfortable with, because I think other agents are going to see this and go, well, this worked out great. So
Yeah.
yeah, so some of their contracts I think are probably going to have to look different down the line.
Beyond the Devers tie-in and the tie-in on what deals like this mean just for the future of signings, there is one more element, and we have heard a lot of chatter from Giants Talk listeners and just around social media about the Giants being tied to a trade for Nico Hoerner on the Chicago Cubs. So how does that tie into this? I mean, is this kind of like a writing on the wall thing, or is it still like a pie in the sky?
I think the important tie-in here is that the Giants have felt for a while that, a couple things could shake loose the market, and that could lead to them getting a better opportunity to get their second baseman, get the upgrade that they've been seeking. It doesn't specifically have to be Hoerner. There are other teams that are waiting. Sounds like Bichette's meeting with the Phillies today, so there are other teams that have been waiting around, and I think Donovan has been waiting to see how this plays out, because there have been teams waiting on Bregman there, and waiting to see where he goes. So I do think that this will make the second base market move. Now, does it move in their direction? We don't know. Do they end up with the guy they want? We don't know. But I think, just going back to even being in Orlando, I do think there was just some like, man, we need Bregman to sign somewhere so that some of these teams can start making decisions. Like, we are a month from pitchers and catchers reporting, so some of these teams that have been in trade talks and have been talking to the Giants, like, if you're the Cardinals, you have to make a decision on Brendan Donovan pretty soon. And if you're the Cubs, and maybe this will happen in the next couple of days as Bregman gets introduced, maybe they sit down and Jed Hoyer goes, Hoerner's not going anywhere. But Hoerner's name's been out there this offseason. I've heard it. I know Susan Fusser's reported it. I've reported that their interest in him goes back to the previous regime. So he really is kind of a perfect addition in a lot of ways. He's a Bay Area guy, Stanford guy. He does only have 1 year until free agency, which is why there are trade rumors in the first place. But two-time Gold Glove winner, 4.8 WAR last season, 4 straight 4-WAR seasons. So we always talk about Yaz being a just automatic 2-WAR guy. This has been like an automatic 4, which is pretty good. Not a lot of power, but hit 297 last year, 29 steals. He runs well, defends well, good all-around game. If he becomes available, I'm sure the Giants will make a call or have a lot of talks internally if they haven't already, because he just kind of fits like a lot of what they want to do.
Yeah.
But I think I put him there with Donovan and put him there with other, guys that we might not even know about. Just think that infield market is going to move pretty quickly now, and we'll see if they end up with something from it.
Well, I was going to dive into they got to get Nico Hoerner because he's a Bay Area guy take, but we learned an episode or two ago that we have listeners that don't think that's important.
Yeah.
But yeah, I went to Head Royce in Oakland. I have friends who teach there. I'll have to ask if he's a legend over there. But I think that'd be really cool. You and I have talked about how we're pretty fine with Casey Schmidt and the current existing second base options going forward. But I think that was all kind of tied up in them spending and doing elsewhere. So if the pitching is kind of set, or at least the starting rotation is set, I would love to see them go out and make some moves like that.
That was definitely tied into did a little bit more on the pitching side. So I'm curious to see the next couple of days. I mean, there's a lot of pressure I've seen from Cubs fans and even Cubs media saying hey, go for it now. Nico Hoerner is really good. pair him with Bregman, pair him with Swanson and the rest of these guys, and like actually, act like a big market team. So that is what they should do. But if he becomes available, there are going to be a lot of teams out there that are interested, because he's a really good all around player, and somebody I don't think we just gets talked about much.
Mhm.
But just as you look at his numbers and just year after year, so curious to see the next. I would imagine the next day or two we'll see that either trade rumors pick up with him, or we get the old like Ken
He's not going
Rosenthal,
anywhere.
yeah, Jeff Passan, or somebody just goes,
Yeah.
he's not going anywhere.
Yeah. All right. Well, keeping an eye on that. Until then, though, the Giants did make a move, adding another minor league deal catcher, backup catcher, I guess, to the mix. Alex, what do we know about this guy?
Eric Haas, pronounced
That's
like
what I was going to
Haas.
ask first. Is this Haas like the avocado?
It is Haas. Like Haas, he's a Haas, I think.
Okay.
He's been around a minor league deal, his non-roster deal. He's been around a long time, 8 years of big league experience. He was with Milwaukee last year briefly. 675 career OPS, 647 last year in 30 games. I think some people, when I got this question a little bit on social media, some people asking like, well, what does this mean for Suzak and Rodriguez? They were always like, bare minimum, you have 6 catchers in camp. Like,
Mm-hmm.
at the very least, just to make sure you can get all your work in. Not that this is what that's for, but like you need 6 guys. They had 3 on their 40-man. Logan Porter re-signed, but there's always a young guy they bring in there. But they were always going to bring in one more experienced option here, and someone that if you go through a couple weeks of camp in Scottsdale, and Buster Posey, one of the best catchers of all time, looks at his young catchers and goes, "These guys are not ready." Here's the guy who is. So this was, whether it was him or somebody else similarly, this was automatic. I still would, this is not me talking to anybody. This is just my 15 years of doing this. I think I would still make Suzak the favorite just because of the Rule 5 thing. And, they went and got him. And I don't think you then go and get like, I don't want, yeah, unless there's like a real solid, like Stephen Vogt walks through that door, that type. I still think he's the favorite, because you look around the rest of the competition, and yeah, not a lot of not anyone like banging down the door to be Patrick Bailey's backup, obviously. But we'll see where that goes in spring training. It's now you kind of have a traditional setup. We have the Rule 5 guy where there's some urgency there. We have the veteran who we know could step in very easily and be Bailey's backup on opening day and be used to that. He has done that for a long time. And then you have Rodriguez, who I do think the door is open to, like, what is this guy? And he strikes me as like, I think we're going to talk about him a lot in the spring, because, his skill set, he strikes me as somebody who we could look up in spring training and be like, Jesus Rodriguez is like 7 for 14 through however many games. Like he has hit at every level. So I would assume he's going to hit in spring training. It's a matter of when they feel he's ready defensively. And there's a couple layers ahead of him now, but this will play out in the spring. But I would still think Suzak's probably the favorite, just because the Rule 5 status is really important.
We talked a lot about Rodriguez, like right in the midst of that trade, the Doval trade, just about how he was the most interesting part of that package and the part we wanted to see the most. So you put it very nicely in the fact that they have like each of the different archetypes going into camp. They have the recent trade prospect, they have the veteran. So the stories write themselves. The narratives are there.
It is always one of those, and part of it is because pitchers and catchers report, so these guys are there early. But like that is always one of those early, February 13th. I'm sure I will write something about the backup catcher thing. And you look up at the end of camp a lot of times, and you're like, I think we spent too much time talking about the backup catcher candidates. But yeah, it's also, currently looms is one of the few position battles. They're set at a lot of positions, and we know Christian Koss is probably a lead backup, and we know if they go get a second baseman, you're probably set in the infield too, because Casey Smith's then your like super utility guy. So as they stand right now, not a lot of position battles in spring training, but there will be one for backup catcher.
There's always backup catcher. All right. As we have weeks to go for that, I want to talk remembering some guys. I want to get to some mailbag questions. And of course, we have Randy Winn slated for later this episode. But first, some guys. We had a listener contact us, listener Scott, to give us a remember some guys updates about one, Jalen Davis, who retired. Jalen Davis was what, 2019? I have a lot of Davis memories because that was my first year doing doing NBC Sports Bay Area stuff, and we were dialed in on following some not great players that year.
I think he was talked about a lot. It was like, here's potential, at least, and there hasn't been potential in the outfield for a long time. He retired. He was part of that Sam Dyson trade, which was really a heist.
Absolute heist.
Yeah. Prowander Baroa, who is not totally, like, he seemed like somebody who would come back to haunt the Giants at some point, has not totally broken through, but they got him in that trade. Kaiwei Teng, who's still around, and they're hopeful is part of the solution next year. And turns out Sam Dyson had a lot going on and has basically never pitched again and was washed out of Major League Baseball pretty quickly after that. Jalen Davis spent parts of preseason with the Giants. Very nice guy. Always enjoyed talking to him. Never really, a lot of talent there. Never really made it happen. He was in the minors with the Red Sox and the Mets, and then played independent ball and spent some time in Mexico. But he did announce over the weekend, like, he's done. So I think we're gonna have probably a string of these guys over the. I saw like Tyler Beatty signed a minor league deal at the Cubs, and I feel like we're in this. This is why we do remembering some guys, because we're in this sweet spot of, like, when we started podcasting, a lot of these guys that were prospects and who we were talking about a lot are getting into their 30s. So we're gonna have a lot of these guys over the next few years.
The absolute orange wave coming of all the Farhan guys that we just kind of met, and all the prospects we talked about. It's the sweet spot is here. I don't know if sweet spot's the right word, but it's that's why I love remembering guys. Is like you said, a lot was talked about Jalen Davis in 2019.
Yeah.
We end up talking so much about these guys. I want to know what happens to them later on.
Yeah. Well, here's another one, Blake Sable. We had a million conversations about Blake Sable.
Blake Sable, you would have thought was not a backup catcher, not a super utility guy, but was a major performer.
Well, he was so good with the media too. It was like he had the whole puppy dog thing going on. So enthusiastic. He's a Tampa Bay Ray now, so maybe the Rays will unlock Blake Sable. Hasn't quite happened for him since but look, spent a whole season in the big leagues. Pretty impressive story to start with. Still looking for the breakout after that.
I was always a big Sable guy. I would have worn every year. I'm like, whose jersey would I wear as a fan? There's probably a year in there I would have worn a Sable jersey.
All-time friendly guy. Yeah. So it was and just an all-time, you look at the talent. Mm-hmm. And obviously this for him goes back to when he was a kid and in high school and college, just has always been, just stands out on the field. And you look at him and you're like, that guy should be awesome. Mm-hmm. So waiting for it to happen, but had some big moments, had that walk-off homer to center off Helsley. Had some good moments as a Giant.
I love a guy who plays catcher and also too, or pitcher and also anyone who does one of the real big dedicated niche positions and then can go other places. That's my bread and butter.
Yeah, just a little. I think for him, it's a little disappointment that he hasn't found that spot. It's like a guy who can play some first, play some outfield, catch a little bit, hit a little bit. Feels like he should have a spot in the big leagues.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll keep an eye on that. Blake Sable heading to Tampa. Mailbag questions, Alex. We've got a bunch from listeners. Before we get into those, though, Giants Talk is presented by Mancini Sleep World. At Mancini Sleep World, every mattress is backed by their Rest Easy promise of a 365-night comfort guarantee with the lowest prices and next-day delivery. Plus, they have ongoing deals on top brands like Tempur-Pedic starting at $29 a month, Avocado, Helix, and more. Visit sleepworld.com. All right, listeners, by this point, you're well aware of how mailbag questions work. But just to remind you, if you have any questions about the Giants or, frankly, anything in life at all, go ahead and send them to Alex and myself, wherever you can find us on social media, Instagram, Blue Sky, Twitter/X, Facebook, maybe LinkedIn, YouTube
Fully off.
comments.
I
Are
don't
we
even
both off Facebook? Yeah,
don't
Facebook's
even
out.
know what my password is. Yeah. YouTube, Instagram. Instagram's the best place to find me, or YouTube comments under my
Yeah.
videos.
Yeah, and we will add your questions to our list and get to them whenever we can. But today we have 5 questions. Let's start with one from Jimmy. Jimmy says, "How long will it take the Giants to implement their new contact hitting philosophy and put it into practice? I'd imagine this would take a bit longer than just showing up to spring training."
Great question. Important question. I think it's important to note that there's only so much they can do with certain guys. And Buster was asked specifically about this at the GM meetings. And he basically was like, I mean, you don't want to change Rafael Devers. Like he swings as hard as he possibly can. He's going to strike out a little bit. I think they're going to try to limit strikeouts with certain guys. I mean, you want to bring like Bryce Eldridge's numbers down a little bit. Some of the secondary guys, like Casey Schmidt, some of these guys, the corner guys, Gilbert, Matos, Ramos, they do want to bring those down where they can. They don't want to change guys too much. The main key here is becoming better with runners in scoring position and maybe becoming better at some of the situational stuff. Now, I will say Pat Burrell did a ton on that last spring. Like, that is all he did was try to get, especially these young guys, more comfortable with like a runner on third, just put the ball in play, runner on second, put the ball in play. It didn't totally work, but part of that is because it's really hard to change these guys. So the bigger thing will be down the line, and it's the way they're building. It is the way I shouldn't even mention Gilbert in that because Gilbert's fits this mold of somebody they want. But I think the bigger thing will be down the line. Like, you look at their draft picks, you look at the guys they've traded for, they're going to start funneling guys through the minors and onto the big league roster who are back control guys who don't strike out as much. But the current roster, Adames, Devers, Chapman, Bailey, there's an element of like they are who they are. Now you can make some changes here, but there's only so much they can do, I think, with the veteran guys. But for me, this is about like kind of the secondary pieces, and then really just the young guys. So it's going to take some time. Like, things would change automatically if like a Nico Hoerner comes over, who's it's 297 last year. Like, that'll change things. But I don't think we're going to look up next year and be like the Giants have the fewest strikeouts in the National League. Like, they're not going to turn into the Blue Jays overnight, but it is very clear that that's where Buster wants this to go, and that is what they're working on in the minor leagues. That's the type of player they're targeting in the draft. It's just going to take a few years.
Maybe this is a really stupid follow-up, but is it transparent around the league, like what minor league system, for lack of a better word, like this is the Blue Jays are over there running a contact system in development. The Dodgers are running a power hitting system. Is that just like known or more like internal organizational?
I think to some extent, like, you do know different hitting coaches, what their philosophy is. And, Wilmer was on MLB Network last week and was talking about Justin Veely and how he got him to tap into his legs and convince him, hey, Wilmer, you can hit for power, which he did in San Francisco after not doing previously in his career. So some of these coaches, that 21 staff in particular, I mean, they were very good at tapping into power. Now that the Giants are trying to go the other way, but a lot of this is just going to be on guys getting through the minors. And, you saw their first round pick last year. You saw some of their other draft picks after that. Like, when those guys come up, a lot of this is going to just be organic. But I don't think we're going to see huge changes next season, mostly because this, you're a new hitting coach. You come in here, like, you look at Rafael Devers and Willie Adames in the seasons they just had, like, there's not a lot you're not going to come in and change a whole lot. So there's going to be some things they can find, but they're not going to change a whole lot with this current roster.
Yeah. All right. Next question is for Hot for Ramen. Hot for Ramen says, I got the impression from recent podcasts that the Giants would likely bring together a lot of low cost, profile arms for spring training and let them battle it out for bullpen spots. Does it appear now like the Giants are going to do the same thing for the back half of their starting rotation? If so, how often do you see that work successfully?
Well, 2021 that you
Yeah.
see these types, even 20 a little bit like it's. I don't think that's. I would frame this differently. I mean, I think they found guys that they want. They found their guys in the rotation. Like maybe not the 1A options, but they found guys that they're comfortable with. They found guys that they believe in the rotation, and they are set. Like, I mean, these guys, their rotation's set. So this is different to me than like getting a bunch of Piguero types and throwing them into spring training, which is what they're going to do with their bullpen and see who else can break through in Scottsdale. So I think the rotation, they found their guys, and they are lower cost options, but it's not like, when I say low cost bullpen options, I mean guys on like $1.5 million minor league deals. That's
what I was going to say. And they have had those bullpens before. And, I don't think that went as sideways as maybe us who like them to spend money would have kind of tongue in cheek hoped.
Yeah. These are $10 million rotation pieces, which is, it's not a $20 million rotation piece, but it's a guy. Like, these guys have no concerns coming into spring training.
Yeah. Henry says, spitballing here, but wondered if offering up Ramos for Quan or some variation might be too unreasonable to hope for. I love Elliott, but cringe on every ball hit his way. It's giving up a degree of control and power, but having left button down, plus keeping the streak intact, which might be worth it to me. Of course, this is referring to the opening day left fielder streak. I love that little bit of Giants lore, but I don't know that I'm making trades around it.
I think they need to end that. So hopefully that leads to better days. We've gotten a few Stephen Kwan questions over the offseason. I don't think we've really put him in here just because he's such a good player. And I don't think this is as easy as like, here's one young outfielder for another young outfielder. I know I've seen that variation thrown around on social media a little bit. And maybe Cleveland would just be like, we need the power. But Stephen Kwan is such a good all-around player and has a fair amount of control left. I think he's a free agent in 28. So he's a really valuable piece, and he is somebody that if they made available, like, the Dodgers are calling right away. They've probably called a million times on him anyway. I mean, there was some smoke there at the deadline. Just he would go to the top of the list for a lot of teams that need outfield help. And so you'd have to really bring a really, really good package in return. Very, very highly thought of around the game.
Yeah.
So I would be surprised if they did like a 1-for-1 and just
especially left fielder for left fielder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
good question though, Henry. Michael asks, I feel like you guys let the Giants off the hook with your bullpen discussions. Why should they get a pass for not spending big on a closer?
Did we let the Giants off the hook with our bullpen discussions?
I think we just were so like dialed in that they need to spend money on the rotation.
Yeah.
That now that it didn't happen, our flaws, our lack of focus elsewhere kind of is bubbling up. But I'll give my version of this for Michael. I think in my post 10-year-old life, like the Giants have really only spent trade wise or free agent wise on one closer, and it didn't really go great.
Day one.
Day
Literally.
one.
First inning.
Really? Come on.
Oops. Mark Melanson, what happened here?
I mean, before that, when I was young, I guess Rob Nen, but Mark Melanson is really the only one that comes to mind for me.
Rob Nen gave his shoulder for the San Francisco Giants.
He did.
I think, and I actually think you've been very unemotional about this as well, but I think I come at some of these things I come at everything just from the beat writer perspective, not the fan perspective. And this is one especially where I go, I just know they don't want to spend on a closer. So it's not even, and don't want to spend on the bullpen. And I think they've been more transparent about that than just about anything. Like, you can go back to the interviews I did at the GM meetings, I remember just how much talk there was about non-roster guys and minor league guys and these lesser free agents and their ability to find, like a Henches and a Foley. I think they've been very transparent about that. So sometimes it's like, there's no point in me really us having too many conversations about, like, we didn't have any Edwin Diaz conversations because that's just not happening.
Yeah.
So you can get angry about it from that perspective, but it's just not happening. And Giants were never going to do it, and not something they want to do. I also, not something I would do. Like, I lived through Melanson, but I've also just seen that over. We just saw it with the Dodgers last year and how they tried to fix their bullpen, and Tanner Scott's unusable by the postseason. Like, they end up throwing their rookie out there in the ninth inning of most of these postseason games. So I hate spending money that way. So I do think that's one reason we talked about it from that perspective. Now, having said that, we also have talked about how we wish they had someone who is more comfortable in the ninth inning.
Yes.
And I think your choice was Fairbanks, which I thought was a great potential option. There was some cold weather stuff with him that we kind of glossed over, but I think Helsley was my choice. Like, there was a middle ground there where they could have found a guy. And I do think there are some other guys who have come off the board who are more experienced and are more in that like $4 to $6 million range that they probably would, you'd feel more comfortable going into camp if that guy was in the mix, but that's not the way they want to build their bullpen. And it's one area where I just kind of go, relievers literally come out of nowhere, and I would not be shocked at all if Ryan Walker is awesome next year. And, like, I don't know, Spencer Bivens is pitching the 7th inning and Carson Seymour turns into a dude. Like, that's just how relievers work. So that is how I come at the reliever conversation.
I think my side of the reliever conversation, which might go against my whole, like, I don't want to spend on it, is just, I think closers and relievers are fundamentally two different things. It sounds silly to be like, this guy pitches the 8th and this guy pitches the 9th, and it's two different positions. But I kind of feel like you have to be a little bit of a psycho to be a closer.
Yeah.
And I don't know that they have the psycho on the roster right now, so they're going to have to make do. But one of these years, eventually, it would be good to rediscover that energy.
Yeah, whether it's a psycho or whether it's just doesn't,
like Doval, his heart rate's
Doval.
not going up above resting in the 9th.
I think Birdsong can get there if they don't need him in the rotation.
That's interesting.
So there are guys, and look, they're not stupid. They understand they need someone to step in and pitch 9th inning. And I think they saw what happened last year, and Buster knows this. Buster has been in those. This is one of those where he's been the guy to come to the mound and look in someone's eyes. He was behind the plate for Mark Melanson. Like, Mark was comfortable in the 9th. It just, by the time the Giants got him, was on the way down. But Buster's gone out there in the 9th and looked in someone's eyes and probably thought, ooh, he's not ready for this.
Yeah.
So he understands it. I guess I come at it from the perspective of, like, I think they could use a little more certainty with their bullpen in general, and whether it's the 9th or, remember, there's also the 8th and the 7th, and, like, Walker's comfortable in those spots and Eric Miller is pitching those spots, but a lot of other guys here have not, and have not pitched, have not gone into Dodger Stadium and tried to hold a lead with, Betts and Ohtani and Freeman due up next. Like, a lot of guys just haven't been in that spot. So you can't do it until they ask you to do it. I would feel more comfortable for them if they had just somebody else who has that experience, and they have a month to shake that loose. But in general, I don't have a real issue with the way they've handled the bullpen, because for me, it's like you get a bunch of good arms together and see how at some point see how it shakes out. Like, you want some experience there, but also at some point it's just like, okay, which young guys are going to step up?
You're going to get hot streaks out of some of them. You're going to have some cold streaks out of some of them. We'll be following that. But I mean, like you said, bullpen arms just lately for every team, not just the Giants, do kind of seem to appear. You out of nowhere, you get a guy who throws 99, who's never done it in his career. Guys who you just get shut down by when you visit an out of town
Yeah.
stadium are guys you've never heard
Yeah.
about. So it does make it difficult, I can imagine, for a ownership group to want to spend money on a big name when that just seems to be happening everywhere you look.
Somebody from this group of young pitchers is going to have like a 1.9 ERA out of the bullpen at the end of May. And I can't tell you who it's going to be. It might be Kai Tang. He strikes out a ton of dudes. Like maybe that's his future. Someone will, but yeah, it's right now they're trying to figure out who it is. And to your point about like every team has these randos, like that's part of the importance, I think, of this spring and this season is finding a couple guys who, when they go into, let's say, Arizona, like the Diamondbacks fans are like, where did he come from? Like who's so they haven't done that as much. Like Ryan Walker is a great example of that, but Doval was around for a long time. Rogers was around for a long time. They kind of had their guys at the back end, and now they have to find new ones.
Yeah. All right. One more question, and then we'll get to Randy Winn. Brian asks, is there a different feeling between interviewing Buster Posey as the Giants catcher versus interviewing him now as the Giants president of baseball operations? Aside, of course, from asking different types of questions.
Good question. Not really. No, I think his personality's been the same. I think he's, whatever you think of the way he answers questions, he's always been that way I think he gives thoughtful answers. So, yeah, not really. I think it's been the same when he was a player to president for the most part. Different kinds of questions, but as he said, but no, I don't think there's been a change really in the way those interviews go. It's a funny thing because it's, you see him around the dugout and talking to guys and you're like, I'm sure he could, like, he looks like he could still go out there and just take BP. Fits very well, especially when he's like talking to Willie Adames in the dugout sometimes, or Matt Chapman. Like he's not far from their generation, but
yeah,
he's in charge now.
I was thinking maybe it's weird for him to be having to field so many questions about other people's performance rather than about your own, just coming from a professional athlete background. But I guess as a catcher, you're kind of already doing that a lot. You're answering, what was up with so-and-so in the bullpen, or what did you think of so-and-so's outing tonight? So he's well-trained for that angle.
I think so. I would say the one thing probably is there's maybe a little more, a lot of times when you're that guy, and with Buster, when he was in that position, a lot of times we're going to him to do like state of the franchise stuff almost as a team leader. I remember when Melky got whatever happened with him. It just disappeared. I remember Buster was very young. And I remember we all went to him afterwards because he was one of the team leaders. And I remember he was very kind of terse about it and very like, he made a mistake and we're going to move on. And he ends up being the best player in baseball for the next 2 months and winning the MVP and leading them. But, there was like kind of a fire that came out during that interview. And in down times, like if the Giants lose, if the Giants get swept or have a bad road trip or something, that would always be he would always be that guy. And like now I think Willie is that guy where you're like, hey, that guy needs to like speak for the whole group. So sometimes maybe there was a little bit more of that. And now I think it's probably in general a lot more, I don't know if positive is the right word, but like those are some darker moments for the clubhouse. Like you have a 1-6 road trip and we're waiting at Buster's locker at the end of it to be like, what the hell's wrong with you guys? So there's not as much of that probably in his current job. I mean, there certainly is like end of season. You have to sit down after a disappointing season, but in general, I think it's been about the same.
Yeah. All right. Well, I love the direction Buster Posey has taken on this franchise. We can't talk about him enough on here, but it is so cool. Just as you say that, thinking about the fact that this Rookie of the Year winning catcher is now leading this team from the front office.
Going to be on the Hall of Fame ballot. And there's been some weird stuff from other fan bases. You don't see this because you're not dealing with Twitter anymore.
I see it everywhere.
Yeah.
The internet's not just bad on Twitter.
There should be no discussion in 12 months about his status as a Hall of Famer.
Yes.
So I don't know what the point of like Yankees fans tweeting about it is, but I don't know.
Yeah.
See, so I guess it's just people trying to get engagement and doing the old so and so had more hits than Buster Posey or whatever.
Yeah.
We're like, we were there for his career.
All right. With that, let's head to another guy whose career we were there for. Giants player turned, I can't even off the top of my head describe this beyond vice president of player development, running the development of our prospects and minor league systems. Alex, what do we need to know about Randy Winn going into this interview?
Well, you mentioned him as Giants player. If you're one of our young listeners who was after that, go and look up. I don't remember what year it was. He had he had like 53 hits one September, one year.
Just an all-time
September. Randy obviously did TV with me for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
He is now in charge of the Giants minor league system. Going to try to catch up with him every once in a while. So talk to him at the winter meetings about some of their young guys and really some of a question we get a lot, and we've gotten a few mailbag questions about the way they are trying to develop young players. And it's certainly different than what they were doing before. I don't know how many conversations we had about the Kyle Harrison plan that made zero sense when he was coming up at the end of his minor league tenure and breaking into the big leagues. But they've certainly tried to do some different things with these guys. So talk to them about that and talking about some specific young guys who might be on the radar, because they have not added a whole lot ahead of some of these guys.
Yeah. Before we get to that, Alex, real quick, 2005, Randy Winn has 51 hits in a 4.47 batting average in the month of September, the most hits in 1 month by a Giant in over 30 years.
51 hits in the month.
That is incredible.
Crazy.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
That was my main memory with him before I started doing TV with him. And when we did TV, I'd always be like, what happened that month?
Yeah. Break it down. All right. With that in your mouth, Randy Winn.
Year one for Randy Winn. You are here at the winter meeting, so I assume you're signing up for year two, but I want to take you back a full year. This is completely different for you. You're in charge of a farm system now. What was it like?
It was great. I had a lot of fun being around Buster. Obviously, Buster hired me, coming in with a guy that shares a lot of the same thoughts about the game of baseball, how it should be played, how you should win games, what your goals are, how you develop players. It made my job easy. And I tell people my job is like all the stuff that you see or read or hear Buster talk about in interviews, whether it's situational hitting or winning ball games or wanting to win championship. Those are the same things we're talking about in the minor leagues. And, the how of that, you watch Buster's championship teams like we all did. And I mean, that's the how. It's being a good teammate. It's running the bases hard. It's situational hitting. It's pitching, defense. So for me, that's easy. Like that to me, that's the fun stuff or fun part of baseball, is talking about the little details that help you win ball games.
What was the biggest thing for you that you realized changed since your time in the minor leagues to like the way these guys are doing it now?
Yeah. How long do we have?
Yeah, that's a lot.
Part of it makes me feel like I played in the dark ages, but let's start with this. Like the minor leagues as a whole is just a larger operation, from the number of coaches to strength and training, strength and conditioning, physical therapists, medical, biomechanics, analytics. Like we have all these departments that now play a role in player development, a big role in terms of like analyzing players and making players bigger and stronger and faster, better versions of themselves. Like I didn't have that. It was, on my minor league team, we had a manager, a pitching coach, a hitting coach, and a jack of all trades.
Yeah.
Who also was the trainer, traveling secretary. My first call up, my trainer drove me 2.5 hours to the airport. Like that was part of his job. So we've grown. So the number of people that influence and touch the players on a daily basis has changed. And so that kind of influences my job in making sure that we're all on the same page, that the messaging's the same, that we're all working and pulling in the same direction.
I was reading a story about like top prospects on the flight over here, and it's not talking about even their home runs or their OPS. It's like this guy's 90th percentile exit velocity, this guy's stuff plus. How has it been getting into that stuff? Because I know you've seen a lot of the way the game has changed, but the way prospects are evaluated now, like you'll see a guy get traded and you look at his ERA and it's like, well, no, but the Stuff Plus is really good on him. How has that impacted what you do?
It impacts it daily because we have people that look at those numbers and that information daily. I think all that's great. I think it gives you a deeper dive, a better big picture of the player. But, the bottom line, it's about scoring runs and getting outs. And if you're not able to do that, then it's going to be hard to do that at the major leagues. But, you talked about the underlying numbers. Part of the player in me likes that because it's like, oh, well, maybe you didn't have a great year in terms of like average, but look at all this other stuff that he's doing to impact the game. So I think from that perspective, I think it gives you a better sense and a bigger picture on the player. But, the bottom line is still the bottom line. We're trying to score runs. We're trying to prevent runs. And we want players that are able to do those things.
I talked to Buster about this at the trade deadline because I looked around at the draft and kind of the trade pieces. And basically everybody was a bat control guy, a guy who was hit for average.
You're seeing a pattern? Is that what you're saying, Alex?
What kind of pattern are we going to see coming through the minor league system? And, the big league team is pretty strikeout heavy and could use some of these guys who maybe put the ball in play more.
The game is strikeout heavy. Being able to control the strike zone has been such a big part of the game from the offensive and defensive side. And I think what we're trying to do, and it's no secret, I think you look at our park and the types of players that have been successful in our park and the types of teams that have been successful, throughout the time that our park's been there, you got to be able to control the strike zone on both sides of the ball. So from the pitching standpoint, it's guys that throw strikes. And from the hitting standpoint, it's guys that don't strike out a ton. You're not going to strike out zero. That's impossible. The game's hard enough. But being able to control the strike zone, if you look at this year's World Series, Toronto Blue Jays had a chance to win it all, run on third, less than 2. And that's a situation where you don't want to strike out. Obviously the pitcher's nasty, he's throwing hard and got a great slider, but being able to put the bat on the ball is extremely important. It's always been. And so I think Buster recognizes that, and it's having a balance. It's you can't have every player play like Randy Winn. You can't have every player play like Buster Posey. Maybe you want every player like Buster Posey.
That'd be great.
That would be great. But as I tell Buster, he wasn't the fastest guy, although he fights me on that. But I think the point is you have to have a balance, right? You want guys that are contact guys. You want guys that are power guys. And so to be able to do those things, you have to be able to put the bat on the ball, whether you have power or whether you have speed.
I know, having sat with you in studio, one thing that was important to you is just, making sure guys are moved at the right pace. And we saw, even Bryce doesn't get called up until the very end of the season. I got asked constantly by Giants fans about some of the guys in the lower minors, like Dakota, who's tearing up A-ball. It was very deliberate. I know there's some injuries there as well, but what did that end up looking like in terms of making sure these guys get the right amount of time before getting that promotion?
That proved to be a little bit more difficult than I thought it was going to be. I think the restructuring of the minor leagues, I won't go deep into that, but that's played on how fast, how slow you can move guys, not having the short season A-ball team where it's a soft landing spot for guys out of the draft. But I think it's all about reps. I don't understand how you get better at anything without reps. And, industry-wide, guys who started moving faster and faster. I don't know that that's best for everybody. I think that, if you can play it slow while the guys are younger, when they're more malleable, when they need more reps, and, when you can talk to a guy at low A and say, hey, I know you're having a great year, but, this is something that we see that, is going to help you down the road. Making that adjustment when the kid is younger and having a great year is easier than waiting till, maybe the kid's at AA or AAA and they're drowning, you're underwater. It's very difficult when you've gone 1 for 20 for a guy to come up and say, hey, why don't we make this adjustment? You're like, listen, I'm just trying to survive out here. So that plays a part in it, is trying to make the adjustments without changing kind of the DNA of the player. That's the delicate balance that everybody who's walking behind us now is trying to figure out. But, I believe it's all about reps. And so we've been intentionally not moving guys quite as fast, just so that, we want guys to have some success too, right?
Yeah.
Like it's, I don't think it does our system any good to say, oh, look at all of our prospects have been moved up when all the prospects are struggling. I think you're a better system when guys are having success. They're moving maybe a little bit slower.
I think it was like May where I woke up and Carson Wisenhunt's throwing 7 innings every time out. And I looked at some other game logs with like Trevor McDonald, and I'm like, oh, guys are allowed to throw 6 or 7 innings again, which was not, I mean, Kyle Harrison's thrown 3 2/3 every time out, and then he gets called up 2 years ago. Were you happy with what you were able to do in that department, just making sure that some of these guys got more innings under their belt?
Yeah, once again, it's reps.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how are you going to learn how to control the zone as a pitcher, command your stuff if you don't have enough reps to learn how to succeed and fail and try again over and over. And so it wasn't necessarily about, all right, Carson Wisenhunt, you know, at spring training, all right, here you go, throw 100 pitches. Like, it was very intentionally thought out by our pitching group, and medical was on board with how do we build guys up so that they are in a position to be able to go deeper in ball games. Because, I mean, the reality is my job is to get guys ready for the final exam. The final exam is the big leagues. And so if you are a 1, 2, 3, 4 starter, you can look it up. Like, the numbers show what the expectations are in terms of innings, in terms of pitches, what these guys are throwing. And so my job, our job in PD, is to get the Wisenhunts and the Seymours from last year ready, that when they get called up, they can step in and have an opportunity to be successful. So a lot of thought went into it. It wasn't just guys are going to throw more. And I thought we did a really nice job in building our pitchers up from a starting pitcher standpoint. I thought we did a really nice job in terms of injury prevention, doing it where guys weren't just overthrowing and hurting themselves. That was also a big part of it that got a lot of time and attention and discussion. And I was really happy with the way that went.
One guy I think we're going to be talking about a lot on our podcast and just in general the next couple of years is Joshua Gonzalez. What was your first impression? I mean, he had a great year in the Dominican, but your first impression of just him as a player?
I mean, the first time I laid eyes on him is impressive. The way he fields a ground ball, which sounds silly, like that's usually not exciting, but I watched him field a ground ball and I sat up a little bit. I was like, wait a minute, that was pretty impressive. The kid has tremendous raw ability. He's super young. He's got speed. He's got defense. He's got some bat to ball. Got a little bit of power. We don't want him to focus on that right now. But we really think highly of him. He was well thought of, obviously, when we signed him. He had a really good year down in the DSL. I believe he was named the top prospect in the DSL, stole 30-something bases, is basically able to impact the game in more than one way. He impacts it with his bat. He impacts it when he's on first base. Pitchers have to think about him. He's able to steal. He goes first to third. He's a very exciting player. And then defensively, showed some real maturity, has a good sense for the game in terms of like game clock, made some really impressive defensive plays. So very exciting kid with a lot in front of him.
So many of these guys get signed as shortstops, and everyone's a shortstop when they're that age. But it seems like with him, he's pretty special just defensively over there. Is that what you've seen just in the reps?
I mean, well, once again, he's 16, 17 years old, but, I wouldn't see any reason why he wouldn't be able to remain a shortstop. I think if you look at Little League, generally the best players, they pitch and play shortstop. I don't think that's any different in international signing, but he is definitely, he looks the part.
Just in general, you guys have a pretty strong class of international guys coming through, even pitching Kayama and Martinez. And how do you handle that group and make sure, because there hasn't been a lot of success other than Pablo the last couple of decades and Camilo Doval, Randy Rodriguez, there's a few guys, but in general, some of those guys haven't succeeded. How do you look at maybe the cases of the guys who haven't succeeded and make sure that with these 17, 18, 19-year-olds, you guys handle it the correct way?
Yeah, well, I really can't comment on how those classes were developed. I obviously wasn't around, but I don't think we do it any different than the kids that we sign here out of the U.S. I think you do it carefully. I think you look at each and every player individually and try to make them the best versions of themselves. I think we do a pretty good job of coming up with individual player plans in terms of what do we want Joshua to look like at 16, 17, 18. It's not an exact science. Sometimes the kids take huge leaps forward at that age. Guys can put on a bunch of weight or, and gain strength, and your bodies are changing. When you're talking about DSL signs, we basically bring them in. They're 16-year-old kids, little boys, and then a couple years like, oh my gosh, this guy's a young man. And so you can't always predict that jump, but I think you do it carefully. I think you do it intentionally, and I think you do it case by case basis. So, when we're talking about Joshua, who's, speed and defense, he could change into something else, but that's different than a guy like Bryce Eldridge. Right? You're not going to have the same plan. And so whether we're talking international signs or signs out of the draft, I think you just have to be intentional and look at everybody individually.
I'll finish with two guys who I get asked about a lot, Bo Davidson and Dakota Jordan. I know both of them are flying up prospect lists. What do you like about those two in particular, and what their future might look like?
Yeah, I'll jump somewhere and then I'll come back. I don't know that I love prospect lists. I mean, I understand why we do it. I understand that, when it moves up or when we move up, it looks good for our organization. But I think sometimes it puts unnecessary pressure on guys when you have these expectations to say, Bo Davidson is the next, or Dakota Jordan is the next, when in reality, they are just the first versions of themselves. Yeah. And so with all that, I'll say two really good players, two guys we're really excited about. I'll start with Dakota. He was well on his way to being probably the player of the year in the California League. He was having that type of season on a team that was playing outstanding. He was the glue. He was hitting third on that team. He played center field, has some really good leadership qualities, very physically gifted, did a really nice job in all the things that I started this interview off talking about: situational hitting, putting the ball in play, controlling the zone, running the bases. He hit for average, he hit for power, he stole bases, and kind of like Joshua, was able to impact the game on both sides of the ball, played a really good center field. Really, really gifted. We're really excited about it. We're excited for him to be healthy. He is healthy. He's having a good offseason. We're excited for him to come in next year and hopefully replicate and build on what he did last year. Bo Davidson, left-hand hitter. The ball comes off his bat differently. You hear about that maybe in golf, you're walking down the range, or in baseball, you're walking past the cage and you hear a sound. That's how the ball comes off Bo's bat. Center fielder. Didn't steal a ton of bases, hit leadoff and third this year. We're hoping that he can become a little bit more aggressive on the base pass. That's something I talked to him about. But in terms of like controlling the zone, making a difference with his bat, making a difference with his glove, really had a good year. And he was a guy that came in as undrafted. And so he's really had to work and put up numbers and improve each and every year for this recognition that he's gotten. I think that's well deserved, but there's still more to go for both those guys, and not in a bad way. Like I said, we're not trying to be the best A-ball versions of them. We're trying to be the best versions of who they are, and we think that there's more in the tank for both of those guys.
All right, Randy, we miss you on TV, but it's great being able to get your thoughts.
I did not pay you to say that, but
I'm sure at like 11 o'clock at night when you're watching the postgame, sometimes you're like, I'm all right. But
sometimes I think about calling in. I was like, you know what? I'm watching Alex. I should probably call in.
We'll call you about the prospects, but thank you for going so deep on some of these guys. I know Giants fans are pretty excited about the group that's coming ahead. So,
yeah, absolutely.